Well, today is the day many people have been waiting for in South Africa and around the world. Oscar Pistorius has taken the witness stand on the first day of his defense against a charge of murder. The Olympic sprinter's trial resumed in Pretoria after it was put on hold for 10 days. Pistorius' attorney has been asking him about his early years and his experience of violent crime. The defendant said he has terrible nightmares now and takes an antidepressant and sleep medication. His defense for shooting his girlfriend to death is that he mistook her for a burglar. Pistorius' testimony began with a tearful apology to the family and friends of his late girlfriend, Reva Steenkamp. Robin Curnow is outside the courthouse and joins us now live. And Robin, this is really what we have been waiting for, to hear from Oscar himself. What are some of the other things we learned today?
Well, I think you're right. Absolutely key also for Oscar Pistorius and his defense, for him to tell his side of the story in his own words. What is interesting is that he chose to make that very tearful apology before he gave his testimony. I was in court. It was very powerful. He was shaking, he was crying, and he actually turned his back to the judge, looking Reva Steenkamp's mother in the eye, and gave this sort of wobbly apology, saying things like he can't imagine what he's done to cause this sort of pain and suffering, saying that when he wakes up in the morning, they're the first people he thinks about, prays for. It became so personal in a way, this connection between him trying to explain his feelings to her family and friends, that at one point the judge had to actually encourage him. She apologized, and she actually had to encourage him to say, listen, you can't look at Mrs. Steenkamp, you have to talk into the microphone and address the court essentially. From then on we heard a lot of testimony, quite a lot of detail about his early life, a sense of who he was, the kind of man, the kind of influences that have described his life. But I think what was key is his response and his reaction after he shot and killed Reva Steenkamp. Take a listen to what he says his emotional state is.
I have terrible nightmares about things that happen at night, where I wake up and I can smell blood, and I wake up to being terrified. If I hear a noise, I wake up just in a complete state of terror, to a point that I'd rather not sleep than fall asleep and wake up like that.
Okay, so what you're hearing there is Oscar Pistorius describing how he's fearful, particularly at night time. This, of course, plays into perhaps one of the reasons for his state of mind during the shooting, which will obviously be built on throughout the defense's case. What is also important, I think, particularly in today's testimony, was how long he spent describing the incidents of crime that had affected him or family or friends. Like I said, I was in court, and it was at least 45 minutes of him blow by blow describing incidents when he was a child, of the house breakings, his dad being hijacked, right the way through to certain crime incidents that took place within the months of Reva Steenkamp's shooting. So this is also going to play a huge role in his defense. His fear of crime, his sense of vulnerability, and of course the fact that he was scared. So all of this, laying the building blocks of the defense's case in today's opening testimony.
Really quite an extraordinary day, isn't it, Robin? And I also know at one point he was talking about being bowled over by Steenkamp, his personal feelings for her. With that kind of raw emotion, I have to tell you, if that was happening in a courtroom here in the U.S., the fact that he turned around and directly spoke to the family and apologized, these are the kinds of things that have such an impact on a trial, because you're really trying to sort of identify with what he might have been going through. Does it play out in the same way there? Because there is no jury, is there?
No, and I think that sense of emotional judgment is not as strong in a South African court. The judge is there purely to make an assessment on fact and on the law, and she's assisted by these two assessors who help her on fact. So the fact that he is making these very emotional pleas, that he sometimes cried a little bit, got a little bit more emotionally wobbly when he mentioned Reva's name, they weren't an indication perhaps in terms of how the judge will see him in terms of the case, but it will perhaps build this picture of him as someone who's believable, who's authentic, who's coming from a deeply centered place. He doesn't look, according to the judge, you know, she needs to assess whether he's been over theatrical, whether he's too rehearsed. All of this plays a part, his believability on the stand. So while the judge won't be over-influenced by emotions, this all plays a part in how Oscar Pistorius' testimony is judged and whether it's judged to be truthful and accurate.
All right, Robin Curnow for us with the very latest. Thank you, Robin.